My wife wrote to me, I married your brother. You were always second. I replied, perfect. I blocked her cards. I changed the locks. 3 days later, when they knocked on my door, what they saw they will never forget. There are messages that change your life forever. This one arrived on a Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing reports in my office. Sarah's name appeared on my phone, and for a second, I smiled. I thought she was writing to ask me what I wanted for dinner or to tell me something about her day. We had been married for 5 years. I thought I knew her. I was completely wrong. I married your brother. You were always second. I read the message 3 times before my brain processed the words. My hands began to tremble. My heart raced so fast I thought I would have a heart attack right there at my desk. The coffee grew cold as I stared at those 11 words that destroyed everything I thought I knew about my life. You were always second. That phrase stabbed like a knife somewhere deep I didn't even know existed, because it was true. My whole life, it had been true. In school, when we both played soccer, he was the captain. In college, when we both studied engineering, he got better grades. At work, when we joined the same company, he got the promotion first. And now this. My brother, Marcus, the golden one, the perfect one, the one who always came first. I left the office like a zombie. I don't remember driving home, but somehow I arrived. I opened the door and knew immediately that something was different. The silence was different, emptier, more final. Her closet was half empty. The large suitcase we had bought for our honeymoon was missing. Her toothbrush was no longer in the bathroom. The perfume she always left on the dresser had disappeared. Small, empty spaces throughout the house screamed the truth that I had been too blind to see. I sat on the edge of my bed, and began to remember. The messages she checked secretly, the calls she ended abruptly when I entered the room, the nights she came home late from work with excuses that sounded rehearsed. The times she mentioned Marcus with a strange smile on her lips, how she dressed up more when she knew he was coming over. It was all there, all the signs an attentive husband would have noticed. But I trusted. I believed that when someone tells you they love you and marries you, it's true. How naive I was. The phone vibrated again. Another message from Sarah. I know you're angry, but we need to talk. This wasn't planned. It just happened. Marcus and I truly fell in love. You'll understand eventually. You were always a good man, but there was never that spark between us. With him, it's different. It's intense. It's real. I read each word slowly, each cheap excuse, each pathetic justification. And then something strange happened. The rage I expected to feel didn't come. Instead, something cold, something calculated came. Something that calmed me in a way that surprised me. I wrote a single word, perfect, and blocked her number. Then I called the bank. I need to cancel all credit cards associated with this account immediately. The voice on the other end sounded professional and efficient. He didn't ask uncomfortable questions. In 15 minutes, Sarah no longer had access to our money, my money. Then I called a locksmith. I need to change all the locks in my house today. Can you come tonight? For an extra fee. They could be there in 2 hours. While I waited, I walked through the house systematically. I changed all the passwords for our shared accounts, Netflix, Amazon, Spotify, everything. I removed her access to the home security system. I removed her fingerprint from the iPhone that controlled the thermostat and smart lights. Each mouse click felt like reclaiming a piece of my life. The locksmith arrived on time, an older man with expert hands who asked no questions when I told him to change every last lock in the house. While he worked, I continued with my mental list. I called my lawyer. I left a message requesting an urgent appointment for the next day. You were always second. Yes, my younger brother by 2 years, but who always seemed older, more confident, more charismatic, more successful in everything he touched. I remembered when we were kids, and Mom always used him as an example. Why can't you be more like Marcus? I remembered when we turned 18 and he took the girl I liked to the prom. I remembered when I got my first job and he joined the same company 6 months later, but was already a supervisor when I was still an analyst. And now he had taken my wife. But this time it was different. This time, he didn't know that I knew. This time, I had the advantage. This time, I wasn't going to stand by and watch him take what was mine without a fight. The locksmith finished at 10 p.m. 5 new locks. 5 new keys that only I had. I gave him a generous tip and closed the door behind him. The sound of the new deadbolt sliding into place was satisfying in an almost primitive way. I poured myself a whiskey and sat in my living room, in my house, surrounded by my things and my new locks and my new reality. Sarah and Marcus thought they had won. They thought I was the same passive guy as always, who would stay crying in a corner while they built their great romance on the ruins of my marriage. They were completely wrong. For the first time in my life, I was in control. For the first time, I was 2 steps ahead while they thought they were winning. And they had no idea what was coming. The next 2 days were the longest of my life. On the outside, I tried to maintain a normal routine. I went to work, answered emails, pretended everything was fine. On the inside, I was a mess, trying to think clearly. Wednesday morning, from my office, I Googled divorce lawyer and what to do when your wife cheats on you. I felt pathetic typing those words, but I needed answers. The first results sent me to Reddit forums where other men told stories similar to mine. I wasn't the only idiot this had happened to. I called 3 law firms. The first one asked for $500 just for the initial consultation. The second had an appointment available until next week. The third, Jimenez and Associates, could see me on Friday morning for $200 for the consultation. Is it urgent? The secretary asked me. My wife is cheating on me with my brother, and I need to know what my options are. I understand. I'll note it down for Friday at 9 a.m. While I waited for that appointment, I decided to do my own investigation. That night, after work, I sat at my desk with a beer and opened my laptop. I went to the bank's website and downloaded all the account statements for the last 6 months. And there it was, all of it. I wasn't Sherlock Holmes, but I wasn't blind either. The strange expenses jumped out when you already knew what to look for. Dinners at expensive restaurants on Saturdays when Sarah told me she was going out with her friends, $180 at Le Bernardin, $240 at the Capitol Grill places we had never gone together because I always said it was too expensive for our budget. It turns out it wasn't too expensive, just that I wasn't invited. I took pictures of the screen with my phone. I didn't know if they would be legally useful, but something is something. Then I continued reviewing. Transfers of $200 and $300 from our joint account to Sarah's personal account, always on Fridays. When I asked her about those transfers months ago, she told me it was for personal expenses and women's things. Now I knew what those personal expenses were for. What hurt me the most were the hotels. 5 different charges at downtown hotels in the last 4 months, always on days I was out of town for work or visiting my parents. The last charge was from last weekend, when I went to see my mom because she was sick. While I was taking care of my mother, my wife was in a hotel with my brother. I took screenshots of everything. My phone had 47 photos of bank statements and suspicious expenses. I didn't know if that was enough, but it was what I had. On Thursday, I decided to do something I never thought I would. I drove to Marcus's apartment. Not to confront him, just to see, to confirm what I already knew. But part of me still hoped it was a nightmare. Marcus lives in a complex, not a bad one at all. I parked across the street at 6 p.m. and waited. At 6:30, he arrived in his BMW. At 7:15, Sarah arrived in her Honda Civic the car helped pay for. I saw them enter the building together. She was carrying the suitcase that was missing from our closet. They looked comfortable, natural, like a couple who had done this many times. I stayed there for 2 more hours. They didn't come out. I drove home feeling like a stalker, but also with a strange sense of relief. There were no more doubts. I no longer had to wonder if I was crazy or paranoid. It was real. It was obvious. And it was no longer my problem. On Friday morning, I went to the appointment with Mr. Jimenez, the lawyer. He was an older man with a desk full of papers and family photos. He didn't look like the lawyers in the movies, but he had a calm voice that gave me confidence. "Show me what you have," he told me. I showed him the photos on my phone, the restaurant expenses, the hotels, the strange transfers. I told him about the messages and about seeing Sarah at Marcus's apartment. "Do you have children?" "No." "The house in whose name is it?" "Mine." I made the full down payment. "How long have you been married?" 5 years. "Okay." In cases of proven adultery, you have the advantage, especially if you can prove that she used marital funds to finance the affair, he explained. The basic process: divorce papers, division of assets, alimony. He told me that with the evidence I had, I could avoid paying alimony and keep most of the assets. How much is all this going to cost? It depends on whether she fights or accepts the terms. If she cooperates, about $3,000. If she gets difficult, it could be $8,000 or more. I gave him a $1,000 retainer and left there with a folder full of documents to fill out. That afternoon, I was at home filling out forms when my phone rang. A number I didn't recognize. "Hello." "Brother, it's Marcus." His voice sounded strange, nervous. "Hello, Marcus. Look, we need to talk about Sarah. About what happened." "Okay. I know you're probably upset, and you have every right, but things didn't happen the way you think. It wasn't something planned. It just happened." "It's okay. It's okay." "Yes, these things happen." Silence on the other end. He clearly expected yelling or drama. "Sarah needs to pick up more things from the house. Can we come by tomorrow?" "Sure, but you'll have to ring the doorbell because I changed the locks." "You changed the locks?" "Obviously. She doesn't live here anymore." "Oh." "Okay. How about 2 in the afternoon?" "That's fine." "Perfect. I'll expect you." I hung up and poured myself another beer. In less than 24 hours, Sarah and Marcus were going to knock on my door, expecting to find the same old guy, the brother who always lost, the husband who was going to stay crying while they started their new, happy life. But this time it was different. This time I had information they didn't know I had. This time I had taken steps they didn't expect. Tomorrow, they were going to discover they had completely underestimated the wrong person. And they were going to regret every decision they made in the last 8 months. On Saturday, I woke up at 6 in the morning without an alarm. I had slept better than in weeks. I made coffee, had a quiet breakfast, and organized all the documents the lawyer had given me. I put them in a manila folder on the dining room table where Sarah could see them clearly. At 2 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. I saw them through the window before opening. Sarah looked nervous, fiddling with the car keys that were now useless. Marcus had his hands in his pockets and was looking everywhere but at the door. They looked like teenagers who had been caught doing something wrong. I opened the door. "Hello," Sarah said with a forced smile. "Thanks for letting us come in." "No problem. Come in." They entered the house as if it were enemy territory. Sarah looked around as if she didn't recognize the place where she had lived for 5 years. Marcus stayed near the door as if he wanted to be able to run out. "Do you want something to drink?" I asked, as if they were normal visitors. "No, we're fine," Marcus said quickly. "We just came for Sarah's things." "Of course. Her things are in boxes in the garage. But first, we need to talk about some practical things." Sarah and Marcus looked at each other. Something in my tone made them more nervous. "What practical things?" Sarah asked. I went to the dining room table and took the manila folder. "Well, for starters, the divorce papers." The silence was total. Sarah turned pale. Marcus opened his mouth, but no sound came out. You already talked to a lawyer?" Sarah asked with a trembling voice. "Of course. Friday morning." "Very professional." Mr. Jimenez explained all my rights in cases of proven adultery. "Look, brother," Marcus began. "We know this looks bad." "It looks bad." I interrupted them. No, Marcus, it looks exactly like what it is. My wife used our money to have an affair with my brother for 8 months. It doesn't look bad, it is bad. I took out the printed photos from my phone. The restaurant expenses, the hotels, the mysterious transfers. I laid them on the table like poker cards. $180 at Lou Bernardine on March 15th. That day you told me you were going out with the girls from work, Sarah. $240 at the Capitol Grill on April 22nd. That day I was visiting my sick mom. Sarah looked at the photos, and her eyes filled with tears. And my favorites, I continued, 5 different hotels in 4 months. Always when I wasn't home. Always paid with the credit card that pay every month. Marcus cleared his throat. Brother, I know you're angry, but we can resolve this as a family. As a family? I laughed without humor. Marcus, you slept with my wife, using my money, for 8 months. We are not family. We are people who share parents. Sarah finally spoke. We didn't want you to find out this way. We were going to tell you, in a better way, when? After the wedding? They looked at each other again with that complicit look they had probably used hundreds of times behind my back. Because yes, I already know about the wedding. My lawyer got me the records. They registered as Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez at the Marriott downtown last month. Very romantic. It's not what you think, Marcus said desperately. No? Because I think you two have been planning this for months. I think you used my money to finance your romance. I think you saw me as an idiot who would never find out. And I think you're here now because you need something from me. Sarah wiped her tears. We just want my things, and I need access to the bank account. To pay the deposit for the apartment we're going to rent together. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I started to laugh a real laugh from the stomach. You want me to pay the deposit for your new apartment? It's my money, too, Sarah said with a little more force. I have a right to half of everything. You're right. You're entitled to exactly your half. According to my calculations, of the $47,000 in the joint account, $9,000 is yours. But you also spent $3,400 of marital money on hotels and restaurants for your affair. So, you're really entitled to $5,600. I took an envelope from the folder. Here's your check for $5,600. It's all you're legally entitled to after deducting what you spent cheating on me. Sarah took the check with trembling hands. This is all. It's exactly what you're entitled to. My lawyer was very clear. In cases of adultery where fraudulent use of marital funds is proven, the division is not automatically 50-50ths. Marcus finally exploded. This is ridiculous. We're brothers. You can't do this. I can't do what? Protect what's mine? Use the law exactly as it's designed? Or, can I win for once in my life? You were always too proud, Marcus said. You always thought you were better than all of us. No, Marcus. I always thought we were family. I always thought there were lines we wouldn't cross. I was wrong. Sarah put the check in her purse. And the house. The house that I bought with my money where I live. That house stays with me, obviously. And my car, the car that I financed and for which I've paid every monthly payment. That car also stays with me. But I'm generous. I'll give you 2 weeks to find other transportation. They looked at each other again, finally realizing they had no power in this situation, that for the first time in their lives, someone else was in control. Your things are in the garage, I said, heading towards the door. You have 1 hour to take them. While they packed their boxes into Marcus's car, I stayed in the living room, drinking coffee and watching through the window. Sarah was crying as she carried her things. Marcus looked frustrated and defeated. When they finished, they knocked on the door one last time. Brother, Marcus said, someday you'll forgive us. We're family. No, Marcus. You were my family. Now you're strangers who made the mistake of underestimating me. I closed the door and watched them drive away from the window. Sarah was crying in the passenger seat. Marcus drove in silence, probably realizing that his great romance now had to survive without my money financing it. I poured myself another coffee and sat in my living room, in my house, surrounded by my things and my new reality. For the first time in my life, I had won. For the first time, I had been in control from beginning to end. And it felt exactly as I had imagined it would feel.